What if one of the greatest victories in Islamic history looked, at first, like a humiliating defeat? No city was conquered. No enemy army surrendered. The Muslims were prevented from reaching the Kaaba, and they returned to Madinah without completing the pilgrimage they had traveled for. Some of the companions struggled to understand what had happened, but Allah called it a clear victory. This is the story of the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, a lesson in patience, leadership, and trusting Allah when victory is still hidden. In the 6th year after the Hijrah, Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, saw in a dream that he and his companions were entering the sacred mosque in Makkah. The Prophet set out from Madinah with approximately 1,400 companions. They were not marching to conquer Makkah. They intended to perform Umrah. They wore the clothing of pilgrimage and brought sacrificial animals, making their peaceful purpose clear. But when the Quraysh learned that the Muslims were approaching, they sent forces to prevent them from entering the city. The Prophet changed his route, avoiding a confrontation until the Muslims stopped at a place called Hudaybiyyah, outside Makkah. The situation was dangerous. The Muslims had traveled peacefully, but the Quraysh were prepared to fight. A single mistake could begin a battle near the sacred mosque. The Prophet repeatedly explained that he had not come for war. He was willing to negotiate and accept any reasonable agreement that respected the sacred limits established by Allah. Several representatives traveled between the two sides. Eventually, Uthman ibn Affan was sent into Makkah to explain that the Muslims wanted only to perform Umrah. But Uthman did not return quickly. Rumors spread through the Muslim camp that he had been killed. The Prophet gathered his companions beneath a tree. There, they pledged that they would remain loyal and would not abandon him. This became known as Bayat al-Ridwan, the Pledge of Divine Pleasure. Allah later revealed that he was pleased with the believers who made that pledge beneath the tree. He knew the sincerity within their hearts and sent tranquility upon them. The rumor was eventually proven false. Uthman was alive. Then the Quraysh sent South Suhayl ibn Amr to negotiate a formal peace agreement. The treaty contained conditions that appeared extremely difficult for the Muslims. There would be a truce between the Muslims and the Quraysh. The Muslims would return to Madinah without entering Makkah that year. They could return the following year and remain for 3 days to perform Umrah. The tribes of Arabia would be free to form alliances with either side. But one condition caused particular pain. A person from Makkah who escaped to the Muslims without permission would be returned, while someone who left the Muslims for the Quraysh would not be returned. Then, during the negotiations, something heartbreaking happened. Abu Jandal, the Muslim son of Suhayl ibn Amr, appeared before them in chains. He had escaped persecution in Makkah and reached the Muslim camp seeking protection. But Suhayl demanded that his son be returned under the newly agreed condition. The Prophet honored the agreement. Abu Jandal was returned, despite the pain felt throughout the Muslim camp. To many companions, the treaty felt unbearable. Umar ibn al-Khattab questioned why the Muslims should accept conditions that seemed so unequal. The Prophet reminded him that he was the messenger of Allah, that he would not disobey his Lord, and that Allah would grant him victory. The Muslims had been promised that they would enter the Kaaba, but they had never been told it would happen that year. After the agreement was completed, the Prophet ordered the companions to sacrifice their animals and shave their heads, ending their state of pilgrimage. Overwhelmed by disappointment, they initially remained still. The Prophet entered his tent and consulted his wife, Salama. She advised him to go outside, sacrifice his animal, and shave his head without saying anything further. He followed her wise advice. When the companions saw him, they immediately followed his example. On the journey back to Madinah, Allah revealed Surah Al-Fath. Indeed, we have granted you a clear triumph. What appeared to be a retreat was actually the opening of a new era. For years, warfare had separated Mecca from Madinah. The truce created a period in which people could travel, speak, and hear the message of Islam without constant fear of battle. The Quraysh had also signed an agreement with the Muslims, recognizing them as a serious political community rather than a movement that could simply be destroyed. The following year, the Prophet and his companions returned and performed Umrah as agreed. And when the treaty was later violated by forces connected to the Quraysh alliance, the path opened toward the peaceful conquest of Makkah. Hudaybiyyah teaches us that victory does not always look like victory when it first arrives. Sometimes strength means refusing an unnecessary battle. Sometimes leadership means accepting painful conditions to protect a greater future. Sometimes patience is not weakness. It is the discipline to obey Allah when emotions demand an immediate response. Companions saw closed gates. The Prophet trusted the promise of Allah. And beyond those closed gates stood a victory that would transform Arabia forever. When something in your life feels like a setback, remember Hudaybiyyah. You may see only what was denied today, but Allah knows what that delay is preparing for tomorrow.